This week's Word of the Week is a follow-up on Lucas's question about the word hate. As we explored that word in the most recent Koine Corner, we saw that Jesus said, if anyone comes to me and isn't ready to cut off all other relationships that are challenging their relationship with him, that they were not able to be his disciples. And we said the more crucial term in the verse was disciple rather than hate, because the question was, what's the barrier keeping you from discipleship? Was really kind of the issue. So today we're going to take a deeper dive into the word disciple. The Greek word is mathetes. Let's take a look. So mathetes in general, prior to New Testament period, meant a pupil or an apprentice. In the New Testament context, it's a disciple or an adherent. The noun mathetes comes from the verb manthano, which is to direct one's mind to something. It's learning, or it's actually teaching, skills or knowledge through instruction. So a disciple, by definition, has a master, has a teacher, because it involves instruction. Socrates is described as being the mathetes of Homer. He was the disciple of Homer. He learned information, philosophy, understanding, writing, etc. from Homer. Aristotle is described as being the tutor of Alexander the Great. Not that Alexander was the disciple of Aristotle, because Alexander's dad wanted him to learn very specific things and employed Aristotle as a tutor. So Alexander the Great's life isn't patterned after that of Aristotle. He just learned information from Aristotle. See the difference? The New Testament uses this verb manthano sparsely. In fact, it uses the verb didasko, I teach, 4 times as frequently as it uses manthano. And also, when we think about discipleship, when we think about in the context of Jesus, there's another verb that's even more important, akoluthein, to follow, because both literally and figuratively, the disciples of Jesus followed him as he wandered around for that 3.5 years through the Judean countryside, stopping in towns and cities and camping out in the fields and on the hillsides and teaching masses of people and reaching out with his message. They literally followed, and they were figuratively following as well. So Christian discipleship based on the New Testament use is about following Jesus more than it's about the teaching of Jesus and following the teaching of Jesus. Following his example, his pattern of living, as well as his instruction, is what makes someone a disciple. So a mathetes is someone who chooses to be and to do like the master, in this case like Jesus. Let's take a look at an example in Mark chapter 2, verse 18, that reinforces that notion. Now John's disciples and the Pharisees were fasting, and people came and said to him being Jesus, "Why do John's disciples and the disciples of the Pharisees fast, but your disciples do not fast?" So notice a couple things about the scenario. This group of people come to Jesus to ask about why his disciples aren't fasting. Why do they think that they should be fasting? Because they see that the disciples of John fast and the disciples of the Pharisees fast, but yet they don't see the disciples of Jesus fast. They come to Jesus because they equate the behavior of the disciples with the example of the master. If John's disciples fast, it's because they learned it from John. If the Pharisees' disciples fast, it's because they learned it from the Pharisees. If Jesus' disciples aren't fasting, the questioners rightly assume they must have picked that up from Jesus, because disciples do what they see their master do. So the verse sort of reinforces that notion. So discipleship, if it's directing one's mind, time, and efforts toward recreating the pattern of someone, that then the New Testament Christian paradigm of discipleship focuses the attention on being like Jesus. The questioners in Mark 2 got that. Your disciples, the way they're acting, make us wonder about you, because if they're really your disciples, the way they're acting reflects on what they've seen and heard you do and say. Let's move on and look how Jesus takes this notion and even ramps it up higher than that. This is in Matthew 16:24, both passages from the ESV. Then Jesus told his disciples, "If anyone would come after me, let him deny himself and take up his cross and follow me." I love this beginning part. If anyone would come after me, it's atis thele opiso mu elthein. If anyone thele should desire or wish or want, if anyone wants hopiso after me elthen to come. If anyone wants to come after me, if your desire is to come after me, this is what's involved, Jesus says. You're going to have to deny yourself, take up a cross, and follow me, because my path has a cross in it, and my path is about self-denial. So Jesus is saying, following him, coming to him and following him, just like the passage we looked at in Sunday's Koine Corner. If anyone should come to me and doesn't hate his mother and father, brother, sister, spouse, children, and yes, even his own life, he's not able to be my disciple. Jesus says, if you want to come to me, you have to understand that it involves self-denial and a cross. Then you can follow me if you understand that. So he makes it super clear that following him is not just about following his teaching, that it means going down a similar road because you're going to pattern your life after him. Self-denial, sacrifice, a cross. The good news for them is later there's resurrection. Right? After Jesus leaves them, post-crucifixion and resurrection, after the ascension, an important thing that we see in the book of Acts and in the writings of the apostles in the epistles is they continually point people toward Jesus. They don't just point people toward the message about Jesus or the story of Jesus. They keep pointing people toward the person of Jesus, because for the disciples to make disciples, they are faced with a choice. They can either, if they want to make genuine disciples, they're going to point people toward the same person that they follow. Otherwise, they'll make false disciples. The best they could do is make disciples of themselves. But they keep pointing people toward Jesus, right? What did Paul write? I decided when I came to you that I would know only Christ and him crucified. That the message that I was bringing to you was the message of Jesus. The message of who Jesus is, how he lived, how he walked, how he talked, how he interacted, his self-sacrifice, his crucifixion, his resurrection, his ascension, his glorification, his return. It's all about Jesus. That's the message of the apostles. Because if you're going to be a disciple, you have to be a follower of a master. And in this case, the master is Jesus. So I keep stressing this, but it's important because it's critical to understanding this word mathetes, disciple. It's not just about the teaching of Jesus. It's not just about the teaching about Jesus. It's not Jesus as fire insurance. Do this and you won't burn, right? It's about his life. It's about the pattern he established. It's about his example. And it's also about his teaching. It's about his sacrifice, the cross, the resurrection, glory, the kingdom to come, the whole thing, but it's about the person. Otherwise, we're not talking about discipleship. We're talking about something else. That's why Jesus put up barriers to entry. If you want to follow me, make sure you understand that we're not just talking about feeding the multitudes. We're not just talking about the power to cast out demons. We're talking about a cross and persecution and self-sacrifice. He made it very clear. You might have to make a decision between discipleship and mother, father, brother, sister, spouse, children, and any other aspect of your own life that you cling to. Because if any of those things take priority, you can't be my disciple. Because mathetes takes primacy. Not exclusivity, but it does take primacy. Years and years ago, when I was still a church pastor, I went to a conference, and a speaker said something profound. He said, all of you in your careers will experience a new family moving into town. They'll visit your church and they'll ask you, what does your church have to offer us? And you'll be tempted to say, oh, we have a wonderful children's program, our teen ministry is great, we're doing wonderful things through our food pantry with needy people in the community, or our worship band is unparalleled. There's all sorts of things that you'll be able to recite about programs and things that the church is offering. But he says, if you're serious, he said at the time, if you're serious about discipleship, you'll tell them, well, we can offer you a cross and some self-sacrifice and some suffering and maybe some persecution. And we may even wind up offering you death, but along with that comes the hope of a glorious resurrection and eternity. That was pretty pointed, what he said. And if you're approaching this from an academic standpoint, that may make you feel uncomfortable. But from a lexical standpoint, if we're looking at the word mathetes, disciple, that guy was right. Because to be a disciple, particularly in the New Testament context, to be a disciple of Jesus is to be wholesale, 100% committed, guiding one's mind and energy and time and efforts towards patterning oneself after Christ in the way he lived his life, in the way he interacted with others, in the doctrine that he espoused, and the entire package of who Jesus is and what he said and did, because that's what mathetes means. That's why Jesus put those barriers to entry. I want to thank Lucas again for his awesome question that prompted the last Koine Corner and this week's Word of the Week. And if that was helpful to you, I hope you'll like, share, and subscribe and all that stuff. Feel free to submit questions. I'll do my best to follow up on them. And until we see each other again, Charis Kai Reina Humin, grace and peace to you.